For centuries, the lands of myth have lived in peace, but when an old enemy threatens myth and its magic, Fable and Brendan must work together to put a stop to him and save both myth and Earth. But with a broken past, can there be a bright future? This is their story. Part 1. When Magic Fades. Chapter 1. Fable. Birds were chirping joyfully outside in the land of myth. The sun was warm today, bringing a comfortable mugginess to the forest glade as Fable worked in her gardens. Her purple hair streaked with blue was pulled back into a braid and held up in a loose bun with her wand. The mugwort was growing big enough to harvest, and with the full moon festival starting that evening, she knew this herb would be sought after in potions for its ability to bring message-bearing dreams. Not prophecies per se, but something for each individual that would be important to them or someone close to them. A rustling in the bushes made her look up as a strange creature approached. It looked like a dragon, but was no bigger than a cat and had a mane of gray fur down her spine. Her green scales were clean and polished, and her eyes shone like emeralds. Fable smiled. "How's the rest of the garden looking?" she asked the creature warmly. "Looking well," came a gentle female voice in her head as the creature stretched. "The lavender is ready to be harvested too, so the lunar sight potions will be quite tasty this year." Fable looked at her foxdrake. It was hard to believe that she had been chosen by one of these guardians. They didn't really choose keepers anymore, not since the fall of the Golden Age, and the betrayal of the sorcerer and his guardian. But Aisling must have seen something in Fable's green thumb, and the guardian of herbs and healing had been her companion for the better part of 4 years now. Fable sat back and stretched out a kink in her back. "There's quite the buzz about this year's festival," she said. "Think we should make extra potions?" "It couldn't hurt," Aisling answered. "And seeing as the ingredients are especially fresh this year, this ought to give many a few insightful dreams." "I couldn't agree more," Fable answered with a warm smile. While dried ingredients worked well, it was always the fresh ingredients that held magic best, as long as the intent was focused, that was. Fable flinched as she recalled times when she wasn't as focused, and one spell that was meant to fix her hair ended up giving her 2 colors. She was aiming for violet highlights in her red hair, but then started pondering about her other favorite color, blue, and ended up with a galaxy-colored hairstyle. She was embarrassed at first, but after some encouragement from Aisling, learned to embrace the mistake. It certainly made her stand out in a crowd, but at the same time, it was a good lesson of focus and intent. Fable stood with her basket of herbs as Aisling leapt onto her shoulder, settling in and nuzzling her keeper. "Then let's get started," Aisling told her as Fable turned toward the cottage that she called home. It was a small building, being made with one resident in mind, but it was cozy with room for Fable's books and journals, so it was fitting all the same. She smiled as she set her basket on the counter and started cleaning the herbs of bugs and dirt, then got her stovetop cauldron out before starting the fire. For bigger, more important potions, she'd stuck up the fire pit outside with her big cast-iron cauldron, but this required finesse, and she liked making potions, so the time it took to make them in a smaller pot wasn't a bother. With the cauldron ready, she removed the wand from her hair, letting the braid fall down her back, and held it up. With a flick of her wrist, little jars began to float around her with easy reach. "Okay," Fable mumbled to herself as she opened her hand-bound book to the potion of lunar sight. 4 parts moon water, rose hips and petals, cinnamon, lemon balm, eyebright. "Aisling, are there any eyebright left?" "I have some here," Aisling answered as she passed the herb to Fable. With a quick thanks, Fable crushed the herb and lovingly dropped it into the simmering pot. "Jasmine flower, peppermint, mugwort, and lavender," Fable muttered as she added the last few ingredients. With a wooden spoon that was specifically for potions, Fable stirred the potion clockwise to bring in good dreams and knowledge of what needed to be known. She stopped stirring and held her wand over the potion as the contents stirred in a lazy circle. She closed her eyes,
and honed in her focus.
By herb and by moon, I ask you this boon. Bring dreams of light and dreams of sight. Let what's been hidden be seen. Of this I ask, so may it be.
She felt the magical energy shiver through her wand and into the brew, turning the water into a shimmering violet color. She gave a satisfied nod as she poured it into several little barrel jars to cool and let Aisling inspect them. The foxdrake sniffed the batch and gave a nod.
These will do nicely.
I would hope so. It's the first potion you taught me how to make, Fable answered as she got to work on the next batch.
And you have been very successful in it,
Aisling answered as she got to work at corking the little jars. Fable smiled and her cheeks warmed at the gentle praise. She'd come a long way from studying under the potions master in the village, and she certainly learned a lot more than he could have offered her. Thrush tried, he did, and she appreciated what she learned from him, but it was after meeting Aisling that she had truly bloomed. The two continued working for a while, the pile of potions growing until all the ingredients were used up and Fable sat and started labeling the potions. It was then a shadow crossed her window, making her look up. She relaxed at the sight of a green-eyed Carrot Top leaning in the open window and grinning at her like a Cheshire cat. Creek, you gave me a heart attack, Fable scolded. Oops, sorry, Fable, Creek answered, still leaning on the window. I was passing by when I thought I smelled potions in the works. Fable raised an eyebrow at him. You do realize I can't just give you these, right? She asked playfully. They're for selling only. Aw, not even for a test drive? Creek asked playfully as he gave Fable a grin. No, Fable answered, making a face at her childhood friend. And if you keep insisting, you won't have any of the Strix custard I made earlier. You made Strix custard? Creek asked. I thought the fairies were holding back this year. Aisling helped get some Strix sticks, Fable answered. Come on, I have them chilling over here.
Creek came around to the entrance as Fable got out 2 bowls of Strix custard. He eagerly sat down and happily dug into his bowl of the chilled treat and gave a very happy sigh. Fable chuckled as she leaned back with her own bowl, glad for the break. You and your sweet tooth, she muttered as she happily munched on her treat. Creek chuckled. What about it? So I enjoy sweets. He chuckled as he gave a shrug. Excited for the festival? Fable looked at her mountain of lunar sight potions and chuckled. Maybe a little, she answered bashfully. Every 2 years, the Full Moon Festival was celebrated with eager preparation. It's a holiday of religious roots, but today it's mostly associated with playing instruments, secret gift-giving, and playing with pets. Not to mention it's the time when the veil between the worlds is thin, so visions are easily had with the help of the lunar sight potions. It is officially celebrated for 3 days, but a generally festive atmosphere continues to fill the streets for weeks after the celebrations. Creek gave a little hum, and Fable noticed it. You're not looking forward to it? I am, Creek answered. Just, the festival this year feels off, and I don't know why. He looked at his custard, stirring it with his spoon. I know it sounds crazy, but it just feels different. Fable looked at her dear friend, giving her head a tilt at his concerns. Creek had the potential to be a seer, someone who can feel changes in the world and tell what those changes would be. But he always claimed he didn't want to be a seer, seeing how unhappy the high elf seer, Crystal, was all the time. Did anyone say anything about the festival that you could have overheard? Creek shook his head. No, it's like watching a tidal wave bearing down on a beach village, but no one else is seeing it but you. And for some reason you can't tell anyone what's coming. Aisling gave a small purr, swishing her tail. Sounds like a premonition, she said. Perhaps I should return to the clan and see what they can dig up. I won't be back for the festival, however. Fable looked at Aisling while she spoke, and Creek watched them. "What did you say?" Fable blinked and looked back at Creek, having forgotten that only she can hear Aisling speak. "She offered to see if any members of her clan can offer you answers," she translated. "She won't be back until after the festival, though. Will you be okay waiting until then?" Creek gave a small smile. "I think I can last that long," he answered. Aisling purred again and affectionately bumped her head against Creek's hand, allowing him to pet her as she used the contact to offer comfort before turning away and climbing to the window. She looked back to her keeper. "I'll be back soon." "You'd better," Fable answered as she watched the fox drake leap away and into the forest. Fable sighed as she looked back at Creek, wanting to cheer him up. So she smiled at him. "Well, better finish that up, because you're just in time to help me get these to my shop." Creek looked at her, then at the custard. "I should have known this was a trap," he muttered playfully. Thank you for listening to The Guardians and Keepers of Myth. You can support the story by becoming a patron on Silver Cavern's Patreon page. The first tier will give you early access to new episodes in written form. The second tier allows you behind-the-scenes glimpses to the creation of Fox Drake dolls. You can also follow Silver Caverns on Facebook and Instagram. This fantasy serial podcast is written, produced, and performed by Emily Davis.
Special thanks goes to my patrons: Lucy Estrada Olvera, Christina McKinney, and Matthew Bain. Thank you guys so much. This wouldn't be possible without you.